Hello everyone, this is Just a Dad. I'm going to do some maintenance on my mower, my John Deere X320. In my previous video I showed you how to remove the deck, but I never went into the deck as far as maintenance and sharpening the blades. I've come up with some ideas on it. So we live with a bunch of trees, so we're constantly chopping up leaves and everything. But this deck does have two Greasezerks. So there and there, so I'm going to grease those before I put it up. I'm also going to take, so it takes a 1/2 inch socket. I'm going to take that nut off, that bolt off. I'm going to take this cover off and that cover off because a bunch of debris gets in there. And I've actually had this debris cause the belt to come off. So with these guards, you've got there's grooves that these slide in. You take the bolt out and then they slide and they lift up. And you can see a bunch of stuff gets in there. Okay, so I want to show you something. So this one slid back to get out of those grooves there. This one's different now. You're going to break those tangs if you don't do it the other way. So this one slides this way. So see how the groove, you have to go this way, which is just, it's 90 degrees different from the other side. So just be careful with that. Okay, so the way I clean these decks is I take them outside because you're going to get a bunch of stuff all over. But I use this really long wand air blower. Keeps this blowing the stuff away from your eyes, but you want to wear, make sure you wear safety glasses when you do this. You can get down in those. Okay, so you really want to make sure you get in those grooves, get all this crud away. You might have to use a screwdriver to get in there and pry some of that stuff up. So I want you to see everything gets down in there. These sticks, I've had walnut shells, I've had hickory nut shells get wedged down in there, and I think I've even burnt up a belt one time because of hickory nuts. So you want to really be sure and clean this out. Okay, so earlier I was wrong. 3 of these bearings have Greasezerks. This one, and that one. This is a sealed bearing, no Greasezerk, and no Greasezerk there. So when those start to go bad, they're going to squeal really bad, and then they're going to have some play in them. And then you'll just replace the whole bearing. And same with these. When they start to go bad, you'll get play and squeal in them too. So one thing I want to mention, I tilt my deck up. These decks are really heavy, so be careful, but you can roll them around on these wheels. So I'm going to clean away the grass. I've got this putty scraper. It's a thick one. This doesn't bend really easy. Some of those putty scrapers are real flimsy and they don't work really well. But you're going to want to go down here and scrape away all this old grass away. Be careful of the blade. It could be sharp. Mine are really dull. Okay, so I've cleaned the deck. Now the reason for cleaning the deck is so important is because that grass gets wet and stays wet, and it'll rust your deck. So you can see wherever the grass stayed and I had to scrape off, it was rusting pretty good. Now these decks are pretty thick. This mower is probably 10 years old, so it's getting some rust, but it's doing pretty good. So one thing I want to show you, so like these, you just have to like put some spray oil on them. Sometimes I do, but so these rollers I had to replace last year. They are just plastic, and it isn't just the plastic that wears, it's also the metal rod. I never would have thought the metal axle would have worn, but I actually had to replace this whole metal axle and the rollers. So it's actually quite expensive. These are kind of, the metal ones are kind of expensive. The wheels aren't too bad. It was a really simple job. Just each one of these is a different part number because of the specific holes drilled. So I might do a video on that later. But so just check these. These should not, see, mine are already starting to get some up down play. But I just throw some lube on there. I've stopped using WD-40. The more I research on WD-40, it's a lube, but it's a water displacement. And what I've found is I'll put WD-40 on something, and then a month later, a week later, it's like there's no lube there. It's like WD-40 just really doesn't stick around a lot. So I've been finding some chain lubes and some other spray lubes that stick around. Okay, I'm going to show you now how to take the blades off. It's going to take an 18 millimeter. Now there's two ways you can do it. If you just have a ratchet, I've got a 1/2 inch ratchet that's pretty long, which really helps because these can be kind of tight. But you're going to need a piece of wood if you use it that way. And what that does is that stops it from turning so that you can get this on here. And then when you turn it, the blade won't turn. You're going to have this piece of wood if you want to use this way. But the way now that's 18 millimeter. This is a John Deere. I just don't know why they're using metric, but that's what it is. Into it. What I have is invested in a 1/2 inch electric impact gun. Walmart sells one for like 40 bucks and Harbor Freight sells one for like 70 bucks. These things are worth their weight in gold. Okay, so the reason they're worth their weight in gold is you don't need a piece of wood, and this will not move. It impacts the head of the bolt internally to break it loose, and they just work really, really well. Easy peasy. Okay, so again, I'm going to demonstrate. And there, it just comes right off. Okay, let's do another one with the impact wrench. Comes right off. Easy peasy. So now I've got all the bolts out. You're not gonna. This has a washer and a bolt. 18 millimeter. Don't forget that. So see how there's a little. When you go to put these back on, that's a little lip, and that blade's going to fit right in that lip. And then the washer, and then the bolt. And these do have an up or down. So you can see as the blades are right here. So this is the bottom of the blade. And the top of the blade is going to have your angle on it. So the bottom of the blade is going to be flat. Okay, now that you've got the blades off, there's two ways of sharpening them. I used to do the old school way of taking it to a grinding wheel. So you'd have to have a grinding wheel, and then you would hold this against the wheel, and that works really well. But I just don't like having a grinding wheel around because that's the only thing I would ever use it for. So you do need a vise, not necessarily this big a vise, but you need a vise. You're going to position the blade with the angle towards you. And I bought this at Harbor Freight. This is a 4-inch angle grinder. These things are like between 10 and 20 bucks. They are worth their weight in gold. I've used the heck out of this for a lot of things, but I do want to explain a few things to you. So it's going to come with a kit with a bunch of these discs, 4-inch. You've got masonry. You don't want to use that on masonry. This is for metal, aluminum. This is for metal, aluminum. And then this is just for metal. This is a cutoff. This is for cutting. We're not going to use that. We're not going to use that. We're not going to use that. This is a flapper disc. Now flapper disc might work, but it's going to wear out really quick. It's meant for just some light grinding. We're going to actually use the metal 4-inch disc made for grinding. Now you are going to want to use gloves and safety glasses. And I use hearing protection too. These things are kind of loud. Now make sure the general area around you is, because what this does is it throws sparks off. So granted, they're not going to catch, you know, if they land somewhere they could possibly catch fire. So you're going to want to watch it really close when you do it. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate it for just a little bit. It probably wouldn't hurt to have, so you're definitely going to have safety glasses on. You might want goggles, and you might even want a face shield on. These things have been known to break apart. So a face shield would be the ultimate safety. But what I'm going to do is when I turn it on, it's going to get kind of loud. But I'm just going to go back and forth. And what I want to do is create like a 45-degree angle. I'm sure there's some specific angle, but you know, you're just going to have to eyeball it like at a 45-degree angle. You're not going to want to, this is the bottom side, this is the top. So you're going to want to sharpen it from the top side. So a technique you know, just keep it working, just keep it moving back and forth, and it's going to keep you a nice smooth thing. So You don't want to stop in one spot because it could make a groove. And a lot of these grooves are from hitting branches and stuff. Now, the reason you might have to take a lot of metal off here, and that's because those grooves kind of wrap around to the bottom side. Again, you don't want to grind on the bottom side. Leave that flat. What you're going to do is that angle, you're going to bring that angle down until it meets a good portion of the bottom side. And then, see, this has not been sharpened yet. And I have once before kind of taken some of the grass off of this, but these aren't too bad. So again, the key is to keep it moving and don't stop. If it starts to discolor on you, you want the metal to be nice and shiny. If it starts to discolor, that means you're burning the metal, and it's not going to do very good. Definitely want to make sure you got gloves on. This does get hot. Okay, so I've got all mine sharpened. But I thought about this. Maybe somebody doesn't have a vise. So I thought maybe you could come over here to your deck. Now these decks are heavy. Make sure it is supported. You may have somebody holding it for you. I've got mine up against the mower, but I've got a towel here because it will scratch it. These things do want to kind of kick out. So it doesn't make the greatest working stand, but if you position it properly and maybe have somebody hold it, it'll work. But you could install these upside down. See how I've got the top facing me now? And I could tighten that down. And I could use my grinder, just like this. Maybe have a piece of wood here. But so if you don't have a vise, man, you can still sharpen your blades just by going to get this $20 4-inch die grinder. Now, I don't do the best job sharpening blades. I'm sure there's experts out there that get this just perfect. I live with a lot of trees. I chop everything, rocks, trees up, so mine don't last hardly at all. But the blades have lasted a while. I take about the same amount of material off of both sides. I've never had a problem with vibration or balance or anything. But I don't get this super, you're not going to want to try to get that, don't run your finger across that, you might cut yourself. But so that's a nice trick you could do. If you didn't have a vise, you could sharpen your blades just with your mower deck, but just then be sure to turn them back around. Okay, I've got my blades all done, but I did notice I've got a bunch of crud underneath here, and these cups come off. So it's just a good idea. I have had string wrapped around these. Take the cup off and just clean it up around there. Yeah, see, I've got a bunch of stuff. Looks like some stuff that was causing maybe some issues or something. But then the cup should just slide back on. Okay, so I can't stress enough, if you are going to sharpen your blades with that die grinder, use a face shield. They're really cheap at Harbor Freight. Just grab one. Safety glasses. You only get 2 pairs of eyes. So what I have done in the past is these bolts can get rusted and kind of hard to come off. Even the impact wrench has a hard time getting them off. And so I have put I have anti-seize around. This stuff gets everywhere. And it just takes a very little bit, because that's all it needs. You just put a little bit on the threads, and then every time it lasts for a while. I've had this probably anti-seize on there for 3 or 4 years, and I might reapply in a couple years, but it's pretty good right now. So something I want to point out is these cups, I don't think, maybe I've never had them off. There's quite a bit of crud in there. I'm going to get the scraper and scrape this stuff. And I had some string in there and stuff, so yeah, I'm not sure how I ever had mine off, but they do come off relatively easy and they're easy to clean. Okay, so again, I want to go over putting the blade back on. You have 2 sides. The side with the angle is going to go towards the deck. And then the side towards the grass, the bottom, is the flat side. So there is a little lip here, and that's going to fit just perfectly for the blade. Don't forget your washer and your bolt. Now I have before, this can come off and get cocked a little bit. You want to make sure that's on that groove. And then this will, you can hand tighten this all the way down to where there's no play. And then you are going to want to use an impact or your ratchet with a piece of wood on this, because you do want these tight. You don't want these flying off. Now the next thing is, I've often thought, do these have to be in a certain position? You know, and I thought, well, maybe they do. Not necessarily because they're going to hit. They're designed not to hit, but I thought, well, maybe for vibration or whatever. But I have found that these do not. These can be in any orientation whatsoever. Because what happens as you're mowing along, you'll hit something and this blade will stop. I've looked underneath here. I've set them all, you know, where I thought they should be, and then I look under there and then they're all kind of at a different angle. So it doesn't matter where they're at, because when you hit stuff, they're going to get moved around. And I've never noticed any kind of vibration or it mowing differently. Okay, now we're going to tighten them down. I'm going to use the impact gun. It's easier to tell how tight they are with your ratchet, because, you know, when you put your ratchet on there and you're really putting a good tightening on it, you can sort of tell. These, not necessarily you can tell. So, but you do want to make sure they're good and tight. So I'm going to demonstrate here what I think good and tight is. So that was good and tight. Now these did turn a little bit. Normally they don't turn like that. So you still may want the piece of wood to keep it from turning. I'm going to do another one here. Oops, wrong way. So that's tight. When the bolt stops moving and then it's really ratcheting it pretty good, that means it's tightening it pretty good. If you want to check it, just make sure you can loosen it back up. So one thing I do want to touch on is these wheels. So when I was talking about this thing not being very stable, when you remove the deck, you're supposed to turn these wheels 90 degrees so that the deck can slide out easier. I never do, just because dealing with these is just a real pain in the butt. So I never really take these pins out and turn these wheels. That would probably help with stability. If you turn the wheels 90 degrees, when you remove the deck, then the thing might be more stable. But these things are extremely heavy, just be careful with them. Okay, so we're on to my least favorite part of this job, is using a grease gun. I absolutely hate using grease guns. It's a necessary evil that you have to do. But inevitably, you end up getting it all over. So I don't have many good tricks for you other than to have a lot of towels ready. It makes a mess every single time you use it. It pops on there. You know, as far as how much, I'm not sure. It's, you know, I do 20 pumps, 30 pumps, whatever I think feels good. It comes out in an area where I don't quite see. Like I said, you got 3 of them on this deck. You want to make sure, you want to hold down on this, make sure it's not coming up around the Greasezerk. Okay, so while you have the grease gun out, each of the front tires has one Greasezerk. And these make a mess too, and they're always dirty. So you want to wipe the Greasezerk off before, just to help with getting the grease gun on there. And then you can see where it pops out. It comes out around here, and sometimes down the bottom. So I just pump in, like I said, just a bunch. So you're probably supposed to pump in so much till you get the old out and then the new in. I don't go that quite extreme, but I just put some in there. So there, that was about 8 pumps. And you can see it starts to come out around here, and then you got to clean that up. So something I wanted to show you is grease guns always make a mess. So I figured out a way. So PVC pipe with a cap on it, and it stores your grease gun, because these things always leak. You use it 3 times a year maybe. So when it gets hot, they ooze out. They ooze out the bottom. If you do them sideways, they just make a mess no matter where you put them. But I have found that this works. I had to drill this hole to put a screw into wood. But down here, Must collect in the bottom. I don't have a mess anymore down at the bottom. And grease gun's just awful to use. I hate changing a cartridge, so no easy way of doing that. Yeah, and I'm not sure why, but dogs love the leftovers from the deck. I've got 3 dogs and they all 3 have been over here kind of snacking on it. Okay, I'm ready to put the deck back on. I've got my covers back on. I've checked everything. The belts are good. Now's the time to change that belt. You know, because taking these decks off is just kind of a pain. So I've talked about in my last video, these things are junk. They always clog up. I've tried it. It does not work. Maybe if you just had really simple, a grass lawn that was really pristine, that maybe it would work, but I've never had any luck with it. But all in all, I've been really happy with this John Deere X320. The deck hasn't given me too many problems, other than I get a tree branch in here and it'll pop this belt off sometimes, which can be a pain. And figuring out how to get the deck off was kind of a pain. But okay, instead of going to the other video to show you how to put it back on, I'm just going to show you, continue this video of how to throw the deck back on, because it's just such a pain. So you're going to first want to make sure, remember that that's disconnected, and then you're going to want to make sure, so when we were messing around with it, that rod and everything, you're going to want to tuck this by pulling this rod. You're going to want to tuck this back in so that it will slide back in. Then over here, you're going to want to, when you removed it, you originally had this thing held in place here with this. So you're going to want to release the tension on this, let the pedal back down. What that does is it draws these arms back up so that you can slide it back in. Otherwise, these arms will be down and then you're just fighting it. So, height, deck pedal all the way down, released. And again, it would be easier if you turned these 90 degrees and you could just roll it in. But I just find messing with these pins is such a pain. I saw some of the newer ones have a quick release here, which would be a lot nicer, but I just don't mess with it. Failed to mention, make sure the wheel, the side you're going in, which is the right side for me all the time, make sure the wheel's turned like that and it seems to slide all the way in. I don't know how good this is going to work, but I'm going to just set this here and I'm going to shove it in there. And I put this in first. And that gets my length. Now I'm gonna release, or I'm gonna pull this up and hold it while I lift this up. And that will hold the pedal up. Okay, that takes a lot of force to pull that, so be careful. And then when you've got this all the way up, you lift this up and it holds it. What that does is now your control arms are down, and we got to pull these pins to get the pin in. Okay, I'm going to try to show you how to put this pin in. I grab it from behind, and then it drops. You can see it drops. So it drops. Normally it's up, and you got to get it. Then you got to get it just lined up. This is the hardest part of the whole job right here. There it goes. I have thought I had this in one time, and I was around mowing, and it wasn't even, and I didn't have the pin in. So you want to make sure you've got it in. And you're going to do the same for the other side. Okay, we're gonna got the other side here. Let's take a look. Oops. Sorry about that. So it went in, and it's in, and the pin is set. So now the next thing's gonna be to put the belt on. Okay, before I put the belt on, now this is under a lot of tension. You're gonna have to pull it. Okay, so before I put the belt on, you're gonna have to pull this and then push down on the lever, and then you can release, and it's not gonna spring back or anything. Okay, so now comes the tricky part that took me forever to figure out. I think I finally had to read the manual, but make sure you haven't lost your little pin. Grab the black lever. You're going to pull it towards you. You want all the length you can get. What that's going to do is, by pulling that gives you room to put the belt on. So now the belt will have slop in it, and you can put it around it. There. And then you're going to get the front part. So see, I can put the belt on, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this, and that's going to tighten up the belt. Now I've got to release this arm, and the black thing is going to have to be, that's right, so it has to move this all the way so that the black part has to be on this side. So then it becomes a matter of just lining this up. Okay, now I've got my leverage, but now I got to put my pin in. So I'm going to bring it to right to this point. I got my washer and my pin I'm going to put on. Okay, I've got the washer on. I'm going to put my pin on. Not quite sure where the hole is, but yeah, it's front and forward. Okay, I've got the pin in. Now I can use all the leverage of this. And what that's going to do is that's going to put tension on the belt. Now I'm going to put it in its little spot, and I can verify, okay, the belt's in the right spot and it's got tension on it. Kind of a neat little design, but if you don't know what you're doing, you'll just fight it. So I got my arm reattached. I've got this arm stowed, the belt's on, the front's in, my control arms are in, and now you're ready to go. You've got it on the lowest setting, so you got to push the pedal in, and now change it to your proper setting. Like I said, I'm on 2.75, and then you can release the pedal, and you're ready to go out and try it. Okay, I've got it started. Okay everyone, this is Just a Dad. I want to thank you for watching my video. Normally you would do this in the spring. I did it in the fall. I just went 2 years without doing it. But that's it. One of the problems I've ever had is I did have to buy a new replacement seat off of online. It was a generic one. They wanted like 150 bucks for the John Deere one. This was like 50, and it's holding up so far. But all in all, I'm really happy with this X320. It's about a 10-year-old machine. I've had it now for about 5 years, and I really like it. I'm going to do another video on how to change the oil.